how we shape our relationships. Let's introduce you to a framework that can completely transform the way you think about relationships. It's called Cognitive Interpersonal Therapy, CIT for short. Developed by Dr. David Burns, a pioneer in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. This model builds on the powerful insights of CBT, but takes them further into the realm of relationships. Dr. Burns explains that much of our pain comes from distorted thinking, misinterpretations and assumptions about reality. CBT helps untangle these distortions, allowing us to replace them with more accurate and empowering thoughts. But CIT takes this a step further. It isn't just about your thoughts, it's about how those thoughts shape your relationships. The 3 core principles of CIT. Dr. Burns outlined 3 principles in CIT that may feel uncomfortable at first, but they are powerful if we approach them with an open mind. 1. We help create the problems we complain about. Let's face it, when relationships hit rough patches, most of us cast ourselves as the victim. It's not my fault, we say, but CIT challenges this narrative. Imagine someone who frequently argues with their partner. Instead of focusing on what their partner did wrong, CIT encourages them to ask, 1. What am I doing that might provoke this response? 2. How might my tone, reactions, or expectations contribute to this pattern? This isn't about self-blame, it's about self-awareness. Often, our behaviors unwittingly trigger others in ways that maintain the very dynamics we resent. 2. We avoid examining our role because it's painful. Let's be honest, self-reflection can be uncomfortable. It's easier to point fingers than to confront the ways we might be contributing to a problem. Why do we do this? Because playing the victim has hidden rewards. Complaining about others provides relief, even validation. But CIT reminds us that growth begins with accountability. The discomfort of self-examination is a small price to pay for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. 3. We have far more power than we think. Here's the good news. While we can't control others, we have immense power to transform our relationships by focusing on our own actions and mindset. Think about it. If you believe the problem is entirely the other person's fault, you're stuck. But when you shift the focus to your own behavior, you regain control. CIT encourages us to view relationships as 100% our responsibility and 100% the other person's responsibility, not 50-50. Why? Because we can only change our side of the equation. And when we change how we show up, others often respond in kind. Why CIT works. CIT model teaches us to focus on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, rather than external factors like other people's behavior. In relationships, this means 1. Stop trying to control others. Nagging, criticizing, or blaming rarely inspires positive change. 2. Start working on yourself. When you model the behavior you want to see, you create an environment where change becomes possible. What about toxic relationships? Let's pause here. This framework isn't meant for relationships that are abusive, manipulative, or dangerous. If you're dealing with a toxic individual, someone who refuses accountability or consistently harms you, CIT's principles won't apply. In these cases, protecting yourself and setting boundaries takes precedence. Sometimes the best way to fix a toxic relationship is to leave it entirely. How to apply CIT today? Let's bring this full circle. How can you use CIT to improve your relationship starting now? 1. Notice your patterns. Reflect on recurring conflicts and ask, what's my role here? 2. Take responsibility. Instead of blaming, focus on what you can do differently. 3. Act with intention. Choose responses that align with your values rather than reactive behaviors. CIT isn't about blaming yourself, it's about empowering yourself. By shifting from victimhood to accountability, you unlock the potential to transform your relationships. So, the next time you find yourself frustrated in a relationship, ask yourself, 1. What can I do to shift this dynamic? 2. How can I lead by example? And remember, every relationship is a two-way street, but change begins on your side. As Dr. Burns teaches, you have far more power than you think to create the relationships you truly want. Recognizing and overcoming communication pitfalls. Now I will list common communication errors, and I encourage you to ask yourself, do I do this in my relationships? Be honest, you might be surprised. 1. Claiming to know the ultimate truth. This happens when we act as though our perspective is the only correct one. I'm right, you're wrong, end of discussion. Sound familiar? It's a sure way to shut down meaningful conversation. 2. Diversion. Ever been called out for something, only to change the subject or dig up a past issue? Example. 1. Partner. I wish you'd clean up after yourself. 2. You. Oh, and what about when you forgot my birthday 6 months ago? It's a sneaky tactic to avoid accountability. 3. Blame comes in two forms. 1. Blaming others. This is all your fault. 2. Blaming yourself. I'm the worst, I never do anything right. Both derail healthy discussions. Self-blame, in particular, can prevent constructive feedback by shifting the focus onto your perceived flaws. 4. Defensiveness. When we refuse to admit faults, we become unapproachable. Even those of us on a self-improvement journey fall into this trap, clinging to the image of our better selves and shutting out feedback. 5. Hopelessness and martyrdom. Hopelessness sounds like, I've tried everything, nothing works. Martyrdom, that's playing the innocent victim. I've done everything and you're still the problem. These attitudes block growth and partnership. 6. Demandingness and criticism. Instead of appreciating efforts, you might focus on what wasn't done. Example: your partner cleans the house, but you point out the one thing they missed. Over time, this can erode trust and goodwill. 7. Denial and labeling, denying your role in conflicts or oversimplifying others with labels like jerk or loser, creates walls, not bridges. 8. The fix-it mentality. When someone shares a problem, do you rush to offer solutions instead of listening? Sometimes people just want empathy, not advice. 9. Passive aggression and scapegoating. The silent treatment, slamming doors, or scapegoating someone based on their past mistakes only deepens resentment. 10. Mind reading. Assuming you know what someone else is thinking, or expecting them to read your mind, leads to misunderstanding and frustration. So do any of these sound familiar? The truth is, we all make these mistakes at times. Why? Because most of us were never taught how to communicate effectively. We learned math, science, and history in school, but where were the relationship classes? The good news: communication is a skill. And like any skill, piano, soccer, cooking, you can get better with practice. Don't internalize these habits as part of your identity. Instead, view them as patterns you can work to change. The art of balanced communication. Finding the ER method. Burnout in relationships often leaves us unable to care for others, so finding balance is essential. That balance lies in how we communicate, with empathy, assertiveness, and respect, EAR. These 3 principles help avoid common communication pitfalls and foster healthier relationships. 1. Empathy. Empathy requires us to deeply understand and validate another person's feelings and thoughts. It's not about agreeing or winning, it's about showing genuine interest in their perspective. For example, 1. Instead of saying, I get what you're saying, but it's not like that, try, I can see why you feel this way. Here's how I see things. This approach opens dialogue rather than shutting it down. 2. Assertiveness. Assertiveness involves expressing your truth with clarity and kindness. It's not about being passive or aggressive, it's about being honest. Assertiveness requires stating your feelings and needs without undermining others. 3. Respect. Respect is about treating the other person as a valued human being, even during disagreements. This includes your tone, body language, and choice of words. Reflect on this. If someone reviewed footage of your last argument, would they say you communicated respectfully? Avoid subtle disrespect like eye-rolling, interrupting, or speaking with a condescending tone. Respect means truly listening and not trying to win. Transforming relationships with the EAR method. When you communicate with empathy, assertiveness, and respect, common pitfalls like defensiveness, passive aggression, and sarcasm naturally disappear. Applying this method requires consistency. A habit tracker with EAR as a daily goal can help. Even when conversations are tough, speaking this way can transform relationships in days. Overcoming challenges with nonviolent communication, NVC. For unresolved conflicts, the Nonviolent Communication, NVC framework by Marshall Rosenberg offers structure. Its 4 pillars are: observations, without evaluation. Describe what you see without judgment. Poor, you drink too much. 2. Better, you drank 5 bottles of wine last week. Feelings. Use real feeling words to express your emotions. Avoid masking feelings as thoughts. 1. Poor, I feel like you don't care. 2. Better, I feel hurt and unimportant. Needs. Identify unmet needs driving your emotions. 1. Example, I need to feel supported at home. Requests. Make actionable, positive, and specific requests. 1. Poor, stop drinking. 2. Better, can we discuss what needs are being met by drinking and explore alternatives? Apply the EAR method and NVC to improve not only your relationships, but also how you communicate with yourself. When self-doubt or conflict arises, address it with empathy, assertiveness, and respect. With practice, this approach will lead to transformative changes in how you relate to others and yourself. A final note: true change comes from consistent practice. Even when it's difficult, remember, small steps lead to significant growth. Try it today and witness how your communication shapes healthier, more fulfilling relationships.